Welcome back, everyone. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos and seen you, so hello, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming back. We're starting a brand new unit. It's going to be a really mini unit, and it's going to be on ratios and proportions. Usually we'd lump this in rates, ratios, proportions, percents, all into one bigger unit, but with only a couple weeks left in the quarter, we're going to stick with ratios and proportions for these next couple weeks. Let's get to it. We are starting with ratios, and you can think of ratios as just like a fraction where it's comparing one number to another number. So one goes on top, one goes on bottom. And to help us learn about ratios, we're going to start by looking at some cookies. So if you look down below, I'm going to zoom in here so you can get all the texture of that cookie. You got this nice ooey gooey cookie, and it's a chocolate chip walnut cookie. If you're allergic to nuts, maybe you shouldn't have the walnuts, but if you're allergic to dairy, maybe you shouldn't have these chocolate chips either. But if you aren't allergic to it, they taste delicious. If you wanted to make them, you can Google the recipe. I can share it for you if you want. Even I was able to make these. You can find the ingredients and you can start baking. But it may require a little planning first. In this particular recipe, it requires 3 cups of flour, and it says it's going to make 22 cookies. So I want to first write that as a ratio. We have 3 cups of flour, and that's going to make 22 cookies. So for every 3 cups of flour that I have, I should be able to make 22 cookies. That's a ratio. Sometimes you can write it differently. You might see it written as like 3 cups of flour with a little dot dot like that. 22 cookies. They mean the same thing. So whether you see it written as a fraction like this, or with the dot dot in the middle comparing 2 numbers, they mean the same thing. Don't worry too much about that. But now we want to come up with 2 more equivalent ratios. So if I want to keep that exact same recipe, let's say I want to double it. Let's say I'm really getting hungry for these cookies. I'm going to double the recipe. So I'm going to make an equivalent ratio. So what I can do is I can just take that top and bottom and I can just double it. So if you multiply it by 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom, it's still going to be the same recipe of cookies. Now it's just a little bit bigger. And that would mean we have, if we take 3 cups of flour and we double it, we're now going to have 6 cups of flour. And that should make, instead of 22 cookies, we're going to double it. Now we're going to have 44 cookies. Hope you're hungry. Let's say, hypothetically, instead of doubling it, maybe you don't want all 44. Maybe you want to multiply it by, just 1.5. So you could take those and you could multiply it by 1.5 instead. Let's see what happens when we multiply it by 1.5. If we take 3 and multiply it by 1.5, that means we're going to have 4.5 cups of flour. And if I have 4.5 cups of flour and I increase all the other ingredients at the same proportions, then I'm going to have 22 times 1.5. That's 33 cookies. There's an infinite number of equal proportions that I can come up with, or equal ratios that I can come up with. I just picked 2 of them. You could have multiplied it by 5. You could have multiplied it by 10, 20, if you're really hungry, 1,000. But I just chose 2 and 1.5. These are all equivalent ratios. Now you'll notice that we have this red box in here. What you're going to put in for the answers this week aren't going to be numbers. You're going to put magic words. And the first magic word is football. Because it's football season. The Harding Knights won their first game since I think like 2016. So yay Knights. Go cheer them on. They should have a live stream. So first magic word is football. The reason that we're doing this is because we found that some of you aren't actually watching the videos. So this is going to make you actually watch the videos. Try the next one on your own. What you're going to be doing here is you're going to be looking at a nutrition label for the recipe. of those same cookies. They aren't very healthy. You'll notice if you look at this, there's a decent amount of fat in there, there's a lot of cholesterol in there, there's a lot of carbohydrates, there's a lot of sugar, and that's just in one cookie. So they aren't super healthy for you, but you're going to be looking at this nutrition label. And you'll notice that for one cookie, so I'm going to write for every one cookie, there are 368 calories. So this is a ratio that compares cookies to calories. You could have done lots of ratios here. You could have compared the grams of fat to the sodium. You could have compared the calories to the sugars. You could have compared the protein to cholesterol. I just chose cookies and calories. So now that we have this written as a ratio, go ahead and write two more equivalent ratios to this one. So how many calories would be 2 cookies? How many calories would be 3 cookies or 10 cookies? Come up with 2 equivalent ratios. So I'm going to go ahead and have you pause the video, and when you are done, come on back. All right, now that you've paused it, hopefully you came up with a couple equivalent ratios. Let's go with the easiest one. If you just doubled it, and let's say you had 2 cookies, those 2 cookies are going to have 736 calories. Hopefully you came up with another one. I'm just doing that one so you can check your work. But the second magic word that you're going to be submitting into Schoology is vote. It's your civic duty. Go vote when you're actually old enough to go vote. It is election season right now. It's an exciting time. So make sure your voice is heard and go vote. And encourage others to vote. And what proportions can do is they can allow you to solve for missing values in these equivalent ratios. So we're going to again take a look at the unhealthiness of these chocolate chip walnut cookies. It was known that in one cookie, so one cookie, there were 39.1 milligrams of cholesterol. Cholesterol is things that's going to like clog your veins. You don't want a lot of cholesterol. I want to know how many milligrams of cholesterol are in 5 cookies. So I'm going to put 5 cookies here. So now what we can do is, this is called a proportion. It's where you have 2 ratios that are equal to each other. And we can just take a look. To get from 1 cookie to 5 cookies, we multiplied that by 5. So it's getting 5 times bigger. So if I want to find how many milligrams of cholesterol there are, I can just take 39.1 and multiply it by 5. Whatever you do to the top, you have to do it to the bottom to make it an equivalent ratio. Then we're going to take 39.1 and multiply it by 5. Let me go ahead and get my calculator out. Sorry for the delay. We have 39.1 times 5 gives us 195.5 milligrams of cholesterol in 5 cookies. So that gets to be kind of unhealthy. So I'm not sure exactly what the daily amount is. It looks like you probably want 300 milligrams a day, so you're already pushing your daily limit with 5 cookies. So let's look at the next one. A daily recommendation says that you should eat 2,000 calories a day. So that's kind of a general healthy recommendation. If you're more active, eat a little bit more. You can have more calories. So 1 cookie we know has 368 calories. How many cookies can you eat before you meet the daily recommendation for calories? So again, let's look at that ratio. We know that 1 cookie is going to be 368 calories. And now we don't know how many cookies. I'm going to put a question mark there. But I do know that we're allowed about 2,000 calories a day. And I want to figure out how many of those cookies, if you just eat cookies for the whole day, how many cookies until you reach that 2,000? So with these equivalent ratios, what you have to do is you have to find what is multiplying to get from 368 all the way up to 2000 and sort of figure that out, you could just divide, go backwards. So if we take 2000 and divide it by 368, we get 5.43. So to get from the left side to the right side, it was being multiplied by 5.43. So whatever I'm doing on that bottom part, I should do it on the top part, and I should multiply it by the same thing. So if I take one cookie times 5.43, we get 5.43 cookies. That's how unhealthy those cookies are. They might look delicious, but you're only allowed to eat about 5.5 of them, and then you're filled for the day. Your next magic word, since I know that's all you actually care about now, is the word, because Halloween's coming, spooky. S-P-O-O-K-Y, spooky. And you have 3 of them to do on your own. So go ahead and try the next 3 on your own. Pause the video. When you are all done, come on back and I will reveal the answers to you, and then more importantly, that last magic word. So go ahead and hit pause. All right, welcome back. I just showed you how to set these up, and I'm going to go over these answers for you before we get to that magic word. If you look at the recipe for the cookies online, you had 3 cups of flour made 22 cookies. We went over that earlier. But if you wanted to make 88 cookies, how much flour would you need? So we set up the ratio. 3 cups of flour is 22 cookies. But now we match up. We need 88 cookies down here. Notice how these numbers, or these labels, match up. Cookies match with cookies. So for equivalent ratios, what we have to do is figure out, well, what are we multiplying by to get from 22 to 88? And to figure that out, you could just divide. You could take 88 divided by 22 and you get 4. So we know that we're multiplying it by 4 on the bottom. So I better do the same thing on top, and we're going to multiply by 4. And 3 cups of flour times 4, we made that recipe 4 times bigger, is 12. So we would need 12 cups of flour. Let's take a look at the next one. This one was a little tricky. According to the label, it says that 173 milligrams of sodium, that's what you get in one cookie, will be 8% of your daily recommended limit. We want to figure out how much to make 100% of your daily limit. What are you supposed to get in one day? So we know that one cookie has 173 milligrams of sodium, and that accounts for 8%. So to get from 8% to 100%, what is it multiplying by each time? And to do that, you can just take 100 divided by 8, and it's getting multiplied by 12.5. So if we can take the 173 milligrams, and we can again multiply that by the same number, 12.5, 173 times 12.5 gives us 2,162.5 milligrams of sodium. That's what you should be kind of allowed to eat and consume a day. And the last one. A teacher is able to grade 6 assignments every 15 minutes. Use equivalent ratios to figure out how much they can grade in 2 hours. That's 120 minutes. So again, same kind of process here. We are taking those 15 minutes and we're seeing how many of those 15 minutes fits into 2 hours. And if we take 120 divided by 15, we realize that it's getting multiplied by 8. So if I can take those 6 assignments, I can multiply it by 8. 6 times 8 gives you 48 assignments that a teacher could grade in 2 hours. The last word that we want to reveal to you is the word Pringles. Because once you stop, the fun don't stop. These are the sweet and spicy barbecue flavor. So Pringles. Hopefully you learned a little bit about equivalent ratios. We're going to move on to the next video, learning about proportions.